nearly pitch black. I said hello a few times, but nobody responded. I was about to leave when another text message came through. It said, "I hear you upstairs. Sorry, I forgot to tell you we're in the basement. That's where our office is. Just go to the door on the far left of the room and come on down." I slowly walked over to the door. Every single alarm bell inside my head was going off. I opened the door to the basement. I looked downstairs and saw nothing except a dark abyss. There was no office down there. It looked like every light in the basement was shut off. I realized that every red flag up to this point should have kept me from ever making it this far, but I'm an idiot. I didn't want to believe this was a setup. As I stood at the top of the stairs, I got another message. It said, "Are you coming down, or are you just going to stand there all night?" This was finally the last straw for me. I quietly snuck out of the house. I got to my car and drove off. At first, I thought maybe I was making a mistake and I should have given them the benefit of the doubt. Then I got one last message from the number. All it said was, "Good for you, buddy. Take care now." I ignored the message that night. I had no idea what that meant. I tried calling the number the next day, but the number wasn't working anymore. It was clear to me that Shane and Gabby scammed me and were clearly trying to set me up going into that basement. When I looked for the posting again, it was gone. For the next few months, I was a wreck. Shane had my personal address. He knew exactly where I lived. Every sound I heard, I thought was Shane trying to get inside the house. I eventually told my fiancée what I did because she saw me unraveling. She was upset that I thought she was cheating, but she assured me that she wasn't. We worked on my major trust issues and then moved into a new place several months later. Once I was in a new address, I finally felt safe again. In hindsight, I should have reported them to the police, but I didn't do anything. I ended up just cutting my losses and moving on with my life. It makes me sick to think how close I was to something horrible happening to me. I'm happy my senses kicked in at the last minute. Better late than never. All I can hope is that Shane and Gabby aren't still out there somewhere. At the very least, this story will always be a reminder for me to not always believe everyone and not to be influenced by what others say. Sadly, I'm still working on this. As I'm sure many people remember, 2020 wasn't exactly the greatest time. It was even harder for me because in February of that year, I took a job that was 8 hours from my hometown. I was barely down in this new city for a month when the world shut down. It was hard for me because I was completely alone. After a few months of staying home, I decided I needed to try my best to get out there in the world, even with all the restrictions. It didn't take long for me to find myself on some dating apps. I honestly wasn't looking for love. Truth be told, I just wanted to casually meet some people, maybe make a connection or two. Over the course of several months, I had gone on a few dates with a few different guys. Nothing serious. All the guys were completely fine, but just not what I was looking for. These men were looking for something more than I could give them. I was using these dating apps as a tool to get back out into the world, not to find my soulmate. One of the guys I met was someone named Wade. He was handsome, smart, funny, pretty much everything you could want in a partner, but something was just off. It was just his whole vibe. Something felt wrong. I forced relationships in the past, and I wasn't going to do that again. I will say this, I did give it a chance. We did go on several more dates. I tried my hardest to make it work, but I just didn't have that spark. I assumed that Wade felt the same way. We started talking less and less, and then eventually we just sort of fizzled out. I went on with my life, and I assumed that Wade went on with his. Neither one of us tried to reach out to the other. After Wade, I took a break from the dating pool for a few weeks. I didn't have that depressing feeling anymore. I also finally made a few friends in the area. A few weeks went by, and I started noticing this gray SUV with dark tinted windows outside my house. I know on the surface that isn't that weird. It just felt a little strange because it was never there before, and then all of a sudden it was there every night. After a week of noticing this SUV, I started to look at my neighbors' vehicles. It didn't look like anyone on my street got a new SUV, none that I could tell anyway. That weekend, I went to the grocery store to grab a few things. While I was shopping, I had that horrible feeling that somebody was following me. The store was busy, so it was impossible to tell if I was actually being followed or not. When I was walking back to my car in the parking lot, I noticed that parked right next to me was a gray SUV with tinted windows. It had to be a coincidence. Either way, it freaked me out. If it wasn't a coincidence, that means someone was following me. I loaded up the car quickly. As I was driving by the front of the store on my way out, I noticed something weird. A tall man with slicked back hair and sunglasses was staring right at my car. At least, it looked like he was staring right at me. I was creeped out. I didn't want to wait and see if that man got into the SUV. I tried to get that creepy feeling out of my mind since I had a date to get coffee with someone named Paul. This was my first date since Wade. I met Paul in the late afternoon. Our date was going great. He was charming and I felt like we were vibing. This was the first time I felt anything special on any of these dates. While we were laughing about something, I happened to look up out the window and I noticed the gray SUV. Paul could tell something was wrong because my demeanor changed almost instantly. He kept asking if I was okay because as soon as I noticed the SUV, I started to scan the coffee shop. I was trying to see if the tall man with the slicked hair was inside the shop. At a corner table near the door, there he was. The tall man was playing on his phone. This wasn't a coincidence anymore. This man was clearly stalking me for some reason. I didn't want to freak Paul out because I actually liked this guy. I didn't want to tell him that a creepy guy with tinted windows keeps following me everywhere. I'm sure that's a wonderful way to secure a second date. I told him that I had something work-related that I needed to get done, and he was understanding. I hated lying to him, but I felt like it was necessary. We said our goodbyes, and I left in a hurry. I even took a different way home just in case. It didn't matter. A few minutes into my drive, I noticed in my rearview mirror that the SUV was following me. I drove around for a while. Once I noticed the SUV wasn't behind me anymore, I went home. That night, I decided to text Paul and explain to him why I was acting so weird. He was understanding again. While I was telling Paul, I looked out the window, and once again, that SUV was right outside my house. Again, I was freaking out. Paul convinced me to call the police and tell them what's going on. The cops arrived and approached the SUV. I was watching from my living room window. The tall man that I had seen earlier got out of the SUV and started talking to the police officers. He didn't look defensive or angry. He looked calm. I was trying to read the body language of the man and the officers. The man from the SUV showed the officer something he had in his coat pocket. Something about all this was just strange. The cops came to my door after talking to the man for a few minutes. The police officer informed me that the man outside is a licensed private investigator. He was following me. He pressed the cops for more information, but they didn't have anything to give. I was shocked and honestly terrified. I couldn't even imagine who would try to hire a private investigator for me. I barely knew people in this town. It felt like a major invasion of privacy. After the police left, I went outside to confront the SUV, but it was finally gone. The next few days were rough. The SUV never came back, but just that feeling of being watched never really went away. Also, not having any type of closure on who hired a private investigator really bothered me. I did my best to move on. I just hoped that all this creepy business was behind me. A few weeks later, Paul and I went on a hike at one of the beautiful state parks in the area. However, this was the first time in weeks that I really felt like someone was following me. It wasn't just me either. Even Paul kept turning around and looking in the woods to see if someone was there. I remember joking with Paul that it's probably just another private investigator trying to get what the other couldn't. We both laughed and continued our hike. When we got back to the parking lot, Paul said he was going to use the bathroom before we took off. I was waiting outside the bathroom, looking at my phone, when I heard the sound of running. I looked to my side, and sprinting out of the woods was Wade, the guy I had gone on a few dates with. He grabbed my arm and shouted in my face that we're leaving right now. I started to scream. Wade kept saying that I had been unfaithful, but he's willing to forgive me, that I just needed to go with him. Once Paul heard me screaming, he ran out of the bathroom and tackled Wade to the ground. Wade got up and started to threaten Paul and me. Paul wasn't scared. He stood his ground, and Wade started to slowly back away. We ran to Paul's car, and the second I was inside the vehicle, I called the police and told them what happened. At first, nothing was done because it was a lot of he said, she said with no proof of any foul play. Believe it or not, the private investigator that Wade hired is what saved me in the end. While the guy was investigating me, he realized that I wasn't actually in a relationship with Wade like he had claimed. Apparently, the investigator started to get the feeling that Wade may have been a bit unstable and warned him that he should probably stay away from me. Obviously, he didn't listen. When the police contacted the investigator, he told the officers that Wade could be a problem for me. I was able to get a restraining order. That was as far as I could take this legally. Not long after this ordeal, Wade basically disappeared. I never heard from him again, and he deleted all his social media. I'm still terrified that someday he'll find me again. What scares me the most is that I barely knew this guy, and he went through all this trouble to follow me. If Paul wasn't there, I have no idea what Wade would have done that afternoon. It may seem like an exaggeration, but I believe Paul saved my life that day. It's been a few years, and I haven't seen him, and I hope I never do.